Is this where the heckler sit? Do you want to be picked up for the mic? Oh. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Gene, good to meet you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Toni Frank. I'm with the Texas State Office of Information Security. Today, we're going to have a panel on jobs in cybersecurity. I'll be your moderator. These will be your guests. I'm going to ask them to speak in a second about who they are, why they're here, what are our aims and our goals for this one. There will be some time for you guys to ask any questions if there's anything that I missed. After I get, we have we have 4 sections, so when I get to the end of one section, if you have any questions still on that topic, please raise your hand, and I will address your question. You can come up and speak. Everybody good with that? Just give me a nod or wave. Okay, that works close enough. All right, so I think I've introduced myself. I'm Toni Frank. I'm an information security analyst with the school. These are our panelists for today of jobs in cybersecurity. In either direction, whoever will, for the first question, we will get all of you to speak, tell something about yourself, your education, what you do in cybersecurity to this day. And then for every other question, whoever feels the most comfortable answering it can answer it. If anybody has a second to add on to it, we'll be more than happy to make time for that. Do our panelists understand? Cool beans. Who wants to start?
Everybody?
You got There's only 4 of them. You gotta share.
Okay, I got it. So introduce myself.
Introduce yourself. Tell them something about your background, what you do.
All right, hey guys, I'm Dennis Maldonado. I'm out of the Houston area. My current role is Director of Technology at Westcom, which is a 911 dispatch facility out in the Houston area. We dispatch 911 calls. But my background is I have about 15 years of IT experience. 12 of those is cybersecurity experience, most of that being offensive cybersecurity, pen testing, red teaming, all that stuff. I kind of had grown with the reputation of being like the physical security guy when it comes to full scope red team engagements, but yeah, I pretty much did all of anything you could think of when it comes to offensive security, from network pen testing, web apps, physical security, social engineering, all that stuff. So that's the bulk of my experience, and then I took all of that knowledge into my current project, which is my current role of Director of Technology, where I built and now operate all the technology for this 911 center. I was able to take that experience and make that a super secure facility. So that's what I'm doing right now.
What's up, gang? I'm Greg Furmage. I, along with Tony, work in the Information Security Office here at Texas State. I'm actually a culinary school dropout, so for anybody here who's worried that they're not going to be able to make it without an education, I'm here to show you that's not true. Unfortunately, that might mean I'll have to enlist in the military. So that's how I started my career. I did about 8 years with the Air Force in cybersecurity. Preponderance of my work with the deployment of cryptography and secure communication equipment. After that, I went and became a field engineer out in the database in out in St. Louis, rather. And then after doing a few years of that, that's when I came down here and started working with the Texas State team.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bosche. I've worked in IT for about 20 years. I've been in cybersecurity for about 7. And my current title is a cybersecurity analyst. I work at a small financial services company. Prior to that, I worked at LCRA. And I would say the difference between those two is like I worked with a very big, mature cybersecurity team. I moved to where I am now. because it's a smaller company with a smaller team. And it's been fun being there I've been there almost 3 years now, developing their whole security program and portfolio of defense tools. And yeah, it's a good start.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Nikkola Todev. If you're curious about my accent, I was originally born in Bulgaria, then I moved to Israel, then I moved to the States. About 28-ish years in IT, 18 of them in jobs related heavily to cybersecurity. Experience in cybersecurity of telecom, financial industry, mobile financial industry, government regulations, ITs, related to protecting driving license, passports, credit cards, and all kind of financial instruments, both government related and non-government related. In the past 5-6 years, I'm working for a company that provides IoT services to pipeline and oil and gas pipeline industry. And now, if you're familiar, they fall under the critical infrastructure. So some of you may have heard about colonial pipelines where some things happen there. So now I'm trying to secure IoT products and services for the oil and gas industry, together with our company business process, business systems, and so on. That's in a nutshell.
So, my name is Ausanka. I'm the Senior Manager for Security Policy and Training at Semiconductors. My background in cybersecurity up until recently was here at Texas State University, where I was a project coordinator and did all manner of things related to cybersecurity, from helping with editing and publishing policy, to working with the security operations team for a few years, to training and awareness campaigns. So I did a whole bunch of stuff here. And while I was here, I earned my master's degree in technical communication, and back there also a TechCom grad. And we only very recently actually did I transition to this position at NXP. But I think the semiconductor industry is really fascinating. It's one of those places where the NXP is a company that primarily works with other companies. So they're a supplier, they're a vendor supplier. And so a lot of the stuff that they do is the security of chips, the security of design, and in that space there is also this IT environment that has to be managed and developed and executed on in a way where the environments within which this development is taking place are themselves secure and free from infiltration, free from corruption, free from exploitation. So a lot of what I do is writing and rewriting and updating the rules of how information technology and information security services are administered in a corporate organization, such that the materials and products that we're producing are protected in all of the necessary ways, so that the IP or the intellectual property of the company is safe from threat actors.
Thank you all. I'm going to start with the first questions. We'll have 5 in the general questions area. If y'all have any questions after the 5 that I ask, please feel free to raise your hand and you can come on down. Now, I'm going to throw the nicest softball I can, and hopefully 1 or 2 of you will decide to leap on this one, and then we'll move forward. So the question I have, number 1, is what inspires you to pursue a career in cybersecurity, and what has been the most rewarding aspect of the work? And the check or the bag does not count as an answer.
I would actually love to take on this one, because I had no desire to enter cybersecurity when I started. Cybersecurity kind of landed on me, and I was given an opportunity by the Chief Information Security Officer at Texas State to enter the field, which had I known really about what cybersecurity, what information security was beforehand, at least conceptually, I don't know how I would have felt about it, but once I got into it and once I started learning about it really intimately, I found that it was absolutely my vibe. It was one of those things that really got that investigative side of me excited, that inquisitive side of me excited, the part of me that really loves to read technical documents, which I know is not everybody's, it's not everybody's, choice to serve, but man, I love it. And I think probably the most rewarding part of that is discovering a career that I had no idea that I would be well suited for, and I had no idea that it could take me to where it's taking me now. And I'm just, it's one of those things where sometimes life happens to you and you gotta be open to it, and I'm really grateful for that.
I will actually kind of maybe tell a similar story. So I stumbled to cybersecurity not because I wanted to deal with it, I even didn't know what cybersecurity was at the time. So I will tell you maybe a little bit embarrassing story of what started all these things. So I was working for a company that was developing mobile applications and deploying those server-side of those mobile applications to telecom carriers. And I was in Spain at the time trying to configure load balancers, if some of you know what those are nowadays. But what happened is that there was a brand new type of load balancer that I tried to configure, and those load balancers didn't work very well with the network of the telecom operator, so we caused a downtime. And that downtime actually, when we tried to troubleshoot what's going on and how it works and how we got to a point where a portion of the telecom operator network went down, we started learning about how it interacts with the core switches of the telecom operator, with the firewalls, with all those things. And then I had to write a lot of papers on how we need to deploy it correctly and avoid these kind of situations in the future. So that incident actually forced me to learn a lot about how the in-depth networking works, how firewall works, what application protocols are, and how we protect those application protocols or make them work across networks, both local and wide area networks. And that later on turned into other set of requirements with different applications, this kind of about financial industry where we had to work with banks, and all that knowledge had to be applied to product design, had to be applied to deployment documents, had to be applied to support. And gradually, with all those challenges and customer demands, actually, I ended up in the information security business where I had to build policies, documentation, product requirements, and so on for a set of products and services, which at the end brought me in the States and this kind of business here.
Seems to be a common story among cybersecurity people that they just stumbled upon it and then loved it once they were in it. My story is that I actually didn't intend to get into IT. I studied anthropology as an undergrad, which is similar to culinary school. Probably did. I don't know. This is nowhere near as lucrative as I thought it was going to be. And I knew IT was not going anywhere. It was only going to get bigger. So I started in IT, spent about 10 years trying out different technical positions and never really digging any of them. They were kind of boring. They were just purely technical, fixing stuff that's broken or configuring stuff and figuring out the Bill Gates puzzle, as I described it back then. It just wasn't inspiring. And then I was in a job where it was a lot of after hours work in a data center. And just through networking, through people I knew in the company, I just was surprised with an opportunity to move into a cybersecurity department that was being built, which required the technical background experience that I had, but is, for me, much more interesting. And I found since then, and I'm in my third security position with a third company, that it is a good fit. I wouldn't have predicted that before, but it's, for my mind, the way I work, the fact that there actually is danger out there, there actually is a bad guy trying to get us, keeps me interested and keeps me engaged. And so that's the way it works for me. That's how I ended up here.
Same as everybody else. Obviously, I went to culinary school, so I will say that it was actually pretty lucrative. The unfortunate part with that is the work environment, the work-life balance was pretty horrible. I was working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and at some point I was just like, this isn't really my vibe. I'm gonna get out of here. So I quit that job. I kind of meandered around for a few months, and then I became a garbage man, which it didn't pay as good, but you know, you got to spend a little bit of time outside. But after doing that for a while, I was like, you know what? I don't really see this being a long-term position for me. So at that point, I enlisted in the military, and I had always been interested in computers ever since I was like 10 years old, playing on my uncle's old Commodore 64 with the punch cards and everything. But at that point, I was looking at the jobs that were made available to me, and I was like, you know what? This cybersecurity stuff sounds pretty dope. So I got into that, and you know, the rest is history. One of the things I love about this job is that, you know, the customers, lay people, they always find new and exciting ways to break their machines or lose their data. So if you're looking for a job where, you know, you're wanting to solve a new puzzle every day, people will provide you all sorts of puzzles every single day in this position.
All right, so my story is going to start a lot earlier than all my colleagues here in this panel. But when I was growing up, I love to tinker with things, and I love experimenting with how things work. So, you know, whenever I get a new, like a Nintendo DS or a Game Boy, I took it apart. I purposely broke it because, one, I had no idea what I was doing, but two, I just wanted to know how it worked. So I broke things, and then I fixed them, and then I learned how to break them better. And that just, as I finally got my first computer, Windows XP Dell Dimension 2600 with 512 megabytes of RAM, when I finally got my first computer, that's when I really started just getting into all sorts of trouble, learning how to mess with things, mess with the network, mess with the Wi-Fi. And sure, that got me into trouble, but that was kind of productive trouble after a certain point. But just learning how that works, learning how to break it, I just kind of naturally started getting into what wasn't really much of a cybersecurity field at that time, but has now become just a huge field. And so I learned how websites work, for example, learned how to exploit those and break those, and took that and was able to take that into a career path where now I do pen testing and red teaming, all that stuff. So the way I got started in that is because I taught myself how this stuff works and how we can modify it, make it do something it's not supposed to do. I was kind of bored. I was like the only person in my friend group doing it. So I decided, let's share the wealth. Let's teach people. Let's start teaching other people how to do this stuff, how this stuff works. And I just kept doing that. And when I went to college at the University of Houston, I continued that. I started, you know, just going to different student organizations and giving classes and stuff. And eventually, that network that I was able to build with different people coming to my classes and learning and teaching with me, that network is what ultimately gave me a heads up or a lead up in getting careers and getting jobs and stuff, because those people who I started affiliating with had connections that were able to say, hey, you should apply here because they're looking for someone who has the skills that you're teaching us. And that's how I got started.
Thank you all. The next question I have is, and feel free to answer or not answer, or to jump in whenever. What are the most important skills and qualifications for someone starting in cybersecurity?
Be a little paranoid by nature.
I will challenge that. I'm not sure paranoia is the definite skill. I would say paranoia is a good skill to have, but cybersecurity requires actually a little bit critical thinking and curiosity of how things work. Because I can tell you, a good cybersecurity person is not a person that knows how to click on an interface. They understand how things work under the hood. If you're curious of how things work and what makes them think, I think that's the critical skill that you need to know to become good. I've seen a lot of people that knows a little bit on what's going on, but in order to get the big picture of what the risk universe is, if you need to understand really how a service or application actually is being threatened by bad actor or good actor or whatever, what can break in that, you need to understand how it works. Because that will help you understand where people will try to break it in order to exploit the bad situation, the bad event that they can create. That's all.
I'll actually add to that. So as important as it is to know how your equipment works and how your systems work, it's probably more important to understand how people work. So the vast majority of our data losses are, individual failures. It's just people making mistakes, getting tricked, not understanding processes. So it's important that you understand, have we spelled out the processes clearly enough for individuals to actually follow through with it? Have we made the processes so complicated that people are going to want to look for workarounds where they're ignoring our processes? Is our system so complicated that people are looking for bugs that they can exploit? So one thing that I think that all of you need to work on as you're becoming professionals in the career is, working on your customer voice. You want to be able to make it so that when you're interacting with people who aren't professionals with IT, that you're able to explain things in ways that are clear and concise. You need to be able to create an environment where people feel safe and comfortable bringing their questions to you, because I would much rather an individual reach out to me being like, hey, does this email look legitimate to you, as opposed to coming to me after the fact being like, hey, I responded to this email with all of my personal information, what can I do now?
Yeah, so I agree with everything that everyone here has said so far, but I'm also going to take, when it comes to pen testing, an unpopular opinion, and this comes from personal experience. So when I got into pen testing, red teaming, that's literally the first thing I did. Very little IT, actual work experience, just full-on pen testing, red teaming. And I felt like I did a good job, but it wasn't until recently, 3 years ago, when I took on this new role that I am in right now as Director of Technology. In this role, I built an entire enterprise, highly available secure network from scratch. And until I had that experience of building that network, I didn't really understand how important and critical it is to have that baseline IT experience in order to become a really good, well-rounded cybersecurity professional, specifically when it comes to pen testing. I feel like I did a decent job in pen testing, but now that I have this experience of being on the other side, being the defender, building a network that has to be protected from those adversaries, pen testers, and hackers, I feel now I have a much better understanding. Just like my colleague here was saying, you need to understand how this works. And when I pen tested a big oil and gas company, sure, I kind of knew a little bit what I'm doing, but I had no idea how that whole environment, that whole infrastructure worked. But now that I have that IT experience and knowledge and background, I really understand how it works, and so I can better provide value by adjusting my tactics, techniques, and procedures when I'm doing a cybersecurity assessment against that infrastructure. But also, I have what is the word I'm looking for? I have the empathy of the infrastructure that I'm assessing, if that makes sense. So think about it. If you don't understand what you're assessing and you're just pen testing and you say, wow, this stuff sucks, you have so many vulnerabilities, where's the empathy there? But now that I've built it, I feel for that person that I'm calling their baby ugly, and I'm able to communicate, just like my colleague here was saying, that person's communication skills, I'm able to communicate those vulnerabilities and those findings in a way that is more valuable for them, but is empathetic of them. So I'm not just calling the baby ugly, I'm saying, these are the problems, Here's how they impact you, and here's how you can fix it.
Yeah. Just letting that sink in. It's good.
I'll just add one more thing, actually. Consider the job as building a house of Legos with different Lego sets. The parts are compatible. So yes, the baby definitely is ugly because the parts that you're working rarely stick together well. So if you understand that, and if you understand that cybersecurity is not about IT, it's about the overall business, you'll become good at that job. It's about people, it's about process, it's about technology, it's about all kind of products, it's about the building, it's about the weather. All those things impact cybersecurity. When you understand that, I'm saying you can really become good.
Yes, so there's a word that sums up all of these descriptions, and it's called socio-technical. We live in socio-technical systems. We live in systems that are, built by societal need, by business need, and it's important to remember that, yeah, you have to know your IT baseline. You have to know how, if you don't know how an image is deployed, then you're not going to understand, what the threat vectors are against, deploying unsecured images, or what is an unsecured image, right? Or how does somebody access your network? What is air gapped? What is not? These are important things as well. But the consideration of the word socio-technical, I think, is important because it goes beyond just like saying we need to know people, we need to know how they think, and we need to also know how systems work. We also need to know how these things work together. And I think a lot of times when we're assessing, what we believe to be true about the environment, we don't always necessarily test that against the people there, if that makes sense. So anyway, just to sort of wrap all that up, socio-technical systems it's one of those words to put in your brain and just continue to think about every time you interact with a chip reader, with your card, every time you interact with some sort of automated system around you, anytime that you join a wireless network with your phone, right? Like, just consider the actions that are happening around you.
I think creativity is actually really important because you have to be able to look at a tool or something that was set up and imagine a way to use it beyond what it was intended to be used, such as email is designed for business communication, but it is effectively a direct line that hackers have to your employees potentially, or just simple like websites. A lot of website hacking is because you put in information or you format your input into a field that turns into a command on the back end. And so you're using it in a way outside of what the creators intended it to because they didn't see it being misused. And so you get to be creative. That's also a really fun thing about it, is you get to be creative as you try to figure out how to break things.
Yeah, I want to give a quick story to support both of your points. That, you have to be creative, but also know the business, right? So I was pen testing a website for life insurance policies, right? And it's web app pen testing, right? So you're looking for cross-site scripting, vulnerability, SQL injection. You're looking for just things, did they program it properly, did they input sanitization? But what made, what makes our service better as manual pen testers, not automated scanners, is that we have to understand what the business side of that web application is and how we can impact the business side, not just the technical vulnerabilities. So in my case, I was able to discover, without exploiting any technical vulnerabilities, because they did do sanitization and all that stuff, I was able to manipulate the business process that that web application contained and was able to drop a $10 million life insurance policy on myself for $1 a year. And that's just something that the developers of the application didn't even consider because they did everything by the book. They followed OWASP top 10 and they made sure they did input validation properly and authentication properly, but they didn't consider, wait, the business process can also be hacked. So that's where I kind of got creative and like, okay, they did it right. Let's see if they did their business right. And sure enough, they're able to provide them that value.
Thank you all for your answers. Now, I did promise that I'm only going to do 5 questions per section, but I'm going to cheat on this one just because I'm a dirty cheater. So, my final question in the general section is, can you describe a typical day in your role, or can you tell me what the biggest challenge that you face in your job is?
Sure. I would read a lot. I would simply read so much, and I have to read with a very critical mindset. But if you're reading policy, and that policy is, describing a bunch of processes within it, or it's giving a bunch of guidance to end users, you have to be able to think critically about what it's telling people to do. Because a lot of times, and this is just true for technical documentation since the field began, the writers of these documents are often the people who first do it, right? And so you might have an identity and access management policy. And that identity and access management policy was written by the lead architect for the IAM system. And that lead architect described a whole bunch of very specific processes and detailed all these things, which really should have been maybe like a knowledge base article, or should have been some sort of guideline given to specific teams, but it's all in this one policy document, right? And that is accessible to a lot of people. And so maybe there's a threat actor inside the organization that has access to all of this detailed information about the way your identity and access management system is set up and executed. You don't want that in your policy, right? Your policy is supposed to establish the rules of the road. It's supposed to tell people what they need to do and why. It doesn't tell them how or to what end. Right? Those are different things. And oftentimes those things need to be controlled through access management policies or root policies. But that's a lot of what I do, is I read and I reread, and I write and I rewrite, and I look at business processes, and I look at development processes in the business, and I confirm those things against what's written down, because again, when you're dealing with the shuffle of organizations, responsibility, who's in charge of managing updates, sometimes people leave and nobody picks up the job to revise the policy, and suddenly the policy is out of date. It's telling people to use maybe outdated tools or outdated processes, or there are links within the policies that are going to dead links that provide sort of a dead end for end users, and then they turn to workarounds, and they exploit weaknesses within the system and vulnerabilities within the system through no malicious intent, but because the governance risk compliance areas haven't done their due care in maintaining the relevance of policies, procedures, standards, and guidelines throughout the business processes.
So I'm gonna surprise you, and I'll ask a question. How many of you actually think that a subscription has security vulnerabilities?
A subscription?
Yeah, Netflix subscription.
Oh, probably.
How many of you think how a sales team sells something has a security vulnerability? So I'll tell you what my day started today. So this morning I received an email from a French company that told me, hey, as per our contract that we negotiated about a year and a half ago, we were obliged to notify you that we're under bankruptcy proceeding, and you have about 2 weeks to decide, do you want to acquire a core library that we sold to you under license agreement to put in your IoT device. A bit of history, a year and a half ago, our development team approached me and said, hey, we want to incorporate the latest light end-to-end library in our IoT device in order to standardize communication, have small packets, and so on. And we found this French company that have a good implementation of that. So the bankruptcy practically means that when this company closes, we're no longer able to use their library to sell products. So hadn't I put the provisions that in case this company goes bankrupt, we need, or we have the ability to go and ask and buy their license perpetually versus the term that we currently have, the business will stop. This is how my day started. Then it turned into a discussion. Our sales team decided that they want to sell subscriptions, not per the default term, but they want to sell 2 subscriptions in one sales order, one that starts now for 3 years, and then the second that starts 3 years from now, continues for another 3 years, but with upsell or percent increase. So our company has about 40% of its business related to recurring subscription revenue. Any sales transaction, any business process where I do not track when the subscription starts, when the subscription ends, is that subscription going to be renewed? What are the IoT devices entitled under that subscription? That means that if I don't track this data, we're losing money. So as part of my business process, I had to evaluate, did they actually transacted that transaction correctly? Did we track all the necessary things so we can preserve the revenue that this is supposed to have an increase, right? Because at the end of the day, business is about making money. And cybersecurity is about making is about helping the business make money secure. So if we don't find a way to preserve and grow the revenue, there is no money to protect that business. Then we recently implemented a new subscription management system, and now we need to figure out, are all the data that was migrated correctly, is clean, and do we have all the right information there, and so on. So that was my third big event for the day. Then I had to prepare for our next week town hall, our security minute, where we provide the company on a monthly basis kind of a short and sweet cybersecurity reminder of the dangers in the wild. So I put for this particular meeting the danger of QR codes. Right, our products, we print manuals and then we put a sticker on the unit that we sell to our customer. Hey, this is a QR code. Go open this QR code and download the manual, right? But people want to use QR codes left and right, and the danger is that for a QR code, they can get malware on their phone, they can get scammed to the page. I mean, there are a lot of dangers with QR, so that's my security minute. Then I had to deal with the vendor, so we have another project that we're trying to revamp old web-based system with brand new architecture, with brand new security. I had to deal with the vendor and see, is their proposed architecture matching our business needs with both reliability and security and so on with the public cloud provider. Anyway, this is the type of work that I do on a daily basis. And trust me, if you don't understand the business, it's very hard job to do. As you can see, there is not one single thing that touched really directly the technology part. It's all about the fundamentals there.
I would say my typical day is very boring, and I like it that way. Because if it's exciting, that means hackers did something. Most cybersecurity responsibilities are the day spent basically walking fences and checking defenses. If you've already set up your defenses, you hopefully you're just checking logs, checking alerts, to see if anything is actually a valid attack or breach of some sort. I work on a small team of 3 people, and we all kind of function as analysts and engineers. And so let's see, in the last couple of years, I've spent a bunch of time implementing a few projects, doing some POCs as we consider vendors for onboarding a new tool, implementing that, which then creates more logs and alerts you get to check every day, and being creative with some freeware. That's one thing I really enjoyed the last year of freeware, and some tools we already had, putting them together to do something new and of value, specifically Splunk, Forwarder, and Sysmon to get more perspective into our workstations, which we're a Microsoft house and that on its own didn't really give me the perspective. When I first started working there, first week I told my boss, I'm like, I'm not really comfortable with how much visibility we have in our workstation environment. Then I started immediately addressing that issue. But I think that kind of sums up my experience as a typical day.
Well, I think that my typical days would be a bit more familiar for y'all, who I presume are going to be starting at the lowest rung of the ladder. You know, we've got some business owners here, some team leaders here, but you know, the majority of your work when you're just beginning is going to be, you know, working tickets, going to meetings, dealing with people, you know, people calling you, being like, hey, what's the status on such and such? And probably my biggest difficulty with this is for a lot of career fields that get a lot of news airtime, you know, IT, medical field, politics, banking, that kind of stuff. A lot of lay people will get a vocabulary they'll sort of observe or sort of absorb from the news articles and stuff like that, where they're getting meanings that are adjacent to their actual meaning, but not really what they mean. And that means that they'll be coming to you as the IT professional with specific questions, but not real questions.
Unanswerable questions.
So a lot of the time, you'll run into issues where in a meeting or doing a ticket, you have to parse what non-IT professionals really mean by when they submit their tickets or when they're asking you questions in a meeting. You have to be like, okay, they said this specific thing, but what do they mean by that? Because a lot of the time, they don't know. A lot of the time, they have an idea of what they want, but they don't really understand whether or not it's possible, if it's financially feasible for the company to actually go through with it. So you have to be able to verbalize and sort of understand from that lower level what they're talking about and what you can do to help them.
Okay, so I believe I was brought on this panel to be like the offensive guy.
Yep.
So let me tell you what a typical day in the life of a red teamer is. Okay, so let's paint the story that I'm in the middle of a red team engagement, or I just started a red team engagement. I am hacking away at Acme Corp. And so no entry point yet, but my initial entry point attempt is phishing campaign. So I discover a list of emails that belong to Acme Corp, and I just send them all a bunch of phishing emails that hopefully they click the link, download the attachment, and if they do so, it runs and executes, and I have a shell access to their box. So wake up one morning after I sent that the last night, and first I check, did I get any callbacks? Did anyone actually download that file, execute it, and did any computers ping back to my command and control server? And sure enough, one did. Let's say one did. So now I've got shell access to some low privileged user in Acme Corp. No admin access to the desktop, but I have full access to the desktop, the same access they have. So no admin access. I can't do anything like dump memory or pivot anywhere else, but I can explore and see what does the user have access to. Well, turns out, if I look at this user's name, okay, they're a developer. They're part of the engineering team. What's on their desktop? Oh, what is this? Passwords.txt. What is that? Okay, let's open that. Passwords.txt it looks like an administrator account and password to devbox01. Oh, let's remote into devbox01. Let's try that administrator username and password. Boom, I'm logged in as administrator. Okay, I pivoted from the user's laptop to a development box. Okay, what can I do? I have administrator rights. Let's dump the memory. Okay, I dump the memory. I find that a server administrator had logged into that box the day prior, and the memory is still, the password, the credentials are still in memory. Let's download that. Let's use that NTLM hash, pass that hash to a non-development box, but a production box. Sure enough, he has admin there too. So now I'm on a production box. Let's see what credentials are on that production box. There's an account called domain admin 01. Where are those credentials? Dump that, find the credentials for that, and now I've got domain admin. So I like to call that domain admin before lunch, but the typical day of a red teamer, that's always my goal, is domain admin before lunch. I start with whatever low privilege access I get, and I try to laterally move and privilege escalate. I'm using those terms because those are important terms, my way through the environment in order to finally get what I need to get, which is domain admin, because domain admin will allow me to do whatever I need to get, ultimately get the crown jewels. And so for the rest of the day, I'm doing some other kind of added value things like persistence and exfiltration techniques just to add value to the report. But then I'm documenting everything and I'm writing that up. I'm communicating with my team that I'm working with. And then anything super critical that probably should be fixed right away, I'm communicating with those clients to say, hey, by the way, we got domain admin before lunch. Here's the details. We'll give you a full report at the next assessment, but here's what you need to act and engage now. That's a typical day of a red team.
Thank you all. As I said, I would open it up for questions for each section. So if anybody has a question, please raise your hand and one of our guests will bring you a microphone. You don't have to have one, but there we go. I'll take that one. John, can you bring it?
Hey guys, hello.
Your voice, just project.
I can project.
Okay.
How did you guys fare during the CrowdStrike outage?
Well, actually, before I answer that, I don't have a panel. Do you consider the CrowdStrike outage a cybersecurity incident? No. Oh, come on. The reason, okay, I sort of agree.
I consider it an IT.
Yes, I sort of agree, but I like to be controversial because the definition of cybersecurity is anything that affects integrity, confidentiality, and availability. So technically, Hurricane Barrel was a cybersecurity incident. But I'll answer that first. So again, I manage, I'm also a pen tester, but I manage and maintain the infrastructure for an island facility. And when CrowdStrike happened, it took us out too, because I use CrowdStrike. I still use CrowdStrike, but the story goes that right at 0000, July 19th, so right at midnight, I start getting alerts that servers are going down. And that happens, servers go down for reboots and stuff, but there was a particularly no pattern for these servers going down and also not coming back up. So I'm at home, I'm trying to get ready for bed, but not anymore. I VPN into the environment, I start remote desktoping to investigate the servers that are still up, and I'm losing connection as I'm connected to them. So I'm like, oh, crap. Can I say crap? For those who are familiar, I connect to a virtual console, Dell iDRAC, to check my hypervisor, and as I'm investigating, I see a blue screen right in front of my eye, like, oh my God. The cybersecurity expert finally got ransomware. Thankfully, so I'm investigating, okay, what's going on with root cause. Thankfully, someone actually sent me pretty early on a news article that Delta Airlines, United are all grounding planes. And that clued to me like, okay, I didn't get ransomware, thank God. But I'm investigating, and I was able to find the root cause. It was a CrowdStrike Falcon sensor. And everyone here familiar? I should have started. Everyone here familiar with what happened with CrowdStrike? Yeah. So just quick, CrowdStrike is the endpoint detection response, next gen AD, if you want to call it. It's installed in a lot of environments who purchase that software. It's used for like protecting and detecting cybersecurity related stuff. And CrowdStrike pushed out an update that just crashed almost every single box that CrowdStrike was on. So that happened at Westcom. I was able to find that the root cause was the Falcon sensor, and I was able to come up with an independent fix before CrowdStrike had time to even acknowledge it. So we were able to recover the 911 dispatch facility within 62 minutes. But regardless, this is where, and you talked a little bit about it, I think you talk more about policies, but not incident response plans. That's where we had a good incident response plan, a contingency plan, if you will, where when our computer-aided dispatch, our CAD services went down because all of CrowdStrike took it all out, we immediately activated the plan of getting IT people on site to start investigating and figure it out, but also how did the dispatchers operate? And ultimately, our 911 phone still worked, our radio still worked, so we just had the dispatchers using pen and paper. When all else fails, that was our contingency plan. And it's not technical, but it's still part of the plan. So I think we fared fairly well compared to all of our other partners who had multiple hour outages, but you just gotta plan them all. Anyone else?
You made the comment about the flights being grounded, and there was this joke going around that Southwest didn't have to ground the flights because they were running Windows 95 on Commodore x86 and the.
Not a joke, they were.
I know.
95 SE.
Right, but like the joke is they're just so old and curmudgeon-y that like they never updated anything, and as a result they didn't fall victim to the sort of complications of these really advanced development environments.
Yeah, a little bit to that as well is one of the main reasons why we were able to recover so quickly, because my environment is a Windows environment like yours, right? It's Active Directory, but I'm the director of technology. I'm special. I have a Mac, so my Mac wasn't affected, so I didn't have to waste time fixing that. But I don't know. Maybe there's a lesson there in diversifying technology, but that's also a big business decision that you have to consider as far as diversifying. Anyone else here get affected?
So we did not. And by the way, now that the word diversification was mentioned, so I don't know if somebody really spoke with CrowdStrike and how they sell their platform. But they are trying to sell themselves as one-stop shop for all the security that you need for the company. And Jim mentioned the word paranoia before. So when somebody tries to sell me a golden goose, I really say sorry, no. So I'm not a believer in single technology solutions. When we talk about the baby is ugly, actually I like the baby because when I have different technology, I build a resilience in the point that no single thing will fail the same way. And because of that, we did not subscribe to the notion of one solution for everything. We had different security control, which luckily were not CrowdStrike. So that's how we avoided actually that incident.
Well, you talk, that's like the trade-off between efficiency and effectiveness, right? Like there's this concept in technology, well, in a lot of areas, but technology especially, where something being efficient is a one-stop shop. It's very efficient, but that doesn't mean it's very effective all the time, because if it's your single point of failure, then how effective is it really if it goes down and nothing else works? This is true in everything from technology to the food supply, right? Like, would you rather have a system that's very efficient, but your grocery stores can run out of things in 3 days, or maybe not as efficient, and they have the effectiveness of being able to stay functioning when one supply chain goes down? So yeah, just absolutely.
Can I be both supportive and rebuttal for things that you all said? So I support you. The CrowdStrike shouldn't be a one-stop shop. And the way I approach CrowdStrike is it's not, right? It's a one-stop shop for endpoint detection and response, but not for anything else. I still have Palo Alto for firewalls and other security things. But when it comes to endpoint detection and response, I do want one-stop shop. And the reason why, there's a little bit of, what is it? Like the cost factor, right? If I have multiple vendors, then that's more resources I have to spend in managing them. It's higher cost, more training, but most importantly, you diminish your visibility into the environment. Because if you have a CrowdStrike detecting activity in the environment, it's going to have a consistent attack path that you could follow or investigation chain. But if you're using CrowdStrike and Sentinel in half of the environment each, then CrowdStrike may be detecting part of the attack path, but Sentinel is not, and you've completely lost the breadcrumbs.
And by the way, that's a very, very, very important point. So, cybersecurity talks about defense in depth, right? Layered on approach. So you will hear me say now, and some of the folks here have heard that over the years, but there is no free lunch. You pay one way or another for any free thing that you get. So the fact that you are not putting one type of defense, or you're not splitting the layers of defense in different vendors, which means if you have firewall, stick to one type of firewall. If you want second type of firewall, endpoint protection or something else that protects in a different way, a different place, a different layer, do that as well. But again, you need to understand that every individual layer must have complete visibility, and you need to be able to act and maintain that visibility at any point in time. And that's a very critical piece because the words incident response were mentioned, and you need to understand that the best capability of the cyber professional is to have a mindset that things will go down, things will break. And if you avoid thinking about the happy path, you'll be very well prepared to deal when things go bad. That's all I'm gonna say.
And last up on that, to support what you're saying, my job as the attacker, super easy. I have to be right just once. Their job as defenders, extremely difficult. And that's when you're making your report, you have to have that remorse and empathy, because I can easily find any sort of misstep, exploit, or whatever, because I just need to be right once. They need to be right all the time, and that's statistically impossible. So as an organization, they're always going to be attacked. They're always going to be, there's eventually going to be an incident, but it's how they're able to react to that incident. It's how they're able to be resilient and recover from that incident that makes them great leaders in their organizations.
I'll actually add on to that, completely unrelated to this CrowdStrike thing. So if you all manage to get high enough in the food chain where you're able to sort of have a step in procurement of IT systems, do anything you can to like prevent your random managers and CEO from going to lunch with salespeople, because they will get excited about anything. They will buy stuff that they will never ever use. And each one of those new systems provides new vulnerabilities and vectors of attack. So do whatever you can, stand in their way in the hallway, go into their calendar and delete their lunches. Protect yourself.
What about this new AI tool?
Please no.
It's going to improve productivity so much.
Yeah.
Another thing that does is they end up buying something where there are better tools out there. If you did, like I described earlier, one of my tasks has been to do POCs. If we need some sort of tool to do something, I will go out and find 5 companies that do it, try to do a POC with each of them for a week or 2, kind of get a feel for how well they do it, and then make the selection based on that. Because I've been in a situation where it came down from the top that we were implementing this, and it was really not the best solution.
Be cheap, be very cheap.
I'll say that when I was at one of my previous positions, our CEO came down to me and he was like, "Hey, I bought $500,000 of this new system. Is it approved to deploy on our network?" And I was just like, "How? How did you buy this? I'm like one of the steps before you spend money on software." And he was just like, "Oh, no, I just skipped that." So do your best, Jay.
So regarding CrowdStrike, we were not affected, fortunately. Just by luck, really, because it is such a popular product that is powerful. And
Using Sysmon, so that's your.
that's a side tool. That's a side project.
All right, I'm gonna cut that one off there. If someone has a burning question, I will let you go.
This one's bent, but you should stick it.
Is it okay if I ask 2 or just only 1?
I'm gonna give you 1.5, so if you figure out what you're married.
No
Semicolon.
problem, thank you. Thank you guys for coming out here today as well. One question I was going to ask is, how do you guys feel about the emergency of AI security or cloud computing security? Do you think it's going to be the next new thing around cybersecurity as well, or is it just more of a phase that's just going to come and go?
I have mixed feelings. I think that, here's the problem with the term AI. AI encompasses a lot of things. I mean, the first computer that could be considered AI was built in like the 50s. Like this is not a new concept. It's been popularized by ChatGPT, large language models. And it is, here's the thing, you were already using AI right? Your Spotify suggestion tracks, that's AI. Your recap reel, that's AI, right? They're programmatic functions that are being elaborated on through this like large language model application. And do I think that it will be the next big thing in cybersecurity? I mean, it's already been in cybersecurity in various ways. Like, I don't think it's going to be the end all be all. I think it's going to become one of those tools that it will find its place. But think about, I'm trying to think of a good analogy here, but like you look at Microsoft right now, right? They have 16 different co-pilots, okay? 16 different branded co-pilots. This is not what they're making it out to be. That's, again, just my opinion. I don't represent the opinion of my employer, but I think that AI is not what it's being marketed as. And I think that we just need to be aware of that.
I'll say as simple as this, so like a machine can't be held responsible, so you shouldn't make a machine responsible. You can't depend on it for much more than giving you options. So if you're like throwing a whole job behind it, it can only end poorly.
First of all, the moment my toaster gets AI, I'm going off the grid. So, as defenders, I don't know what I said. As defenders, yet I don't think AI has changed anything for us. What it has done was lowered the bar for script kiddies and these so-called basement hackers to be able to perform certain exploits and stuff. So back then, as an underground hacker, if I wanted to learn how to exploit the new Firefox 0 day, I had to learn how it works and write a script to do it. Now you can just engineer a prompt to have ChatGPT do that for you in Python. So it lowers the bar, but it doesn't really change anything for us as defenders. Now, again, as defenders, if we utilize AI, there's some benefits to that. Not Copilot, because I don't know what's going on with Copilot, but like CrowdStrike has Charlotte AI, which I have yet to try, but is interesting, right? Is if I'm looking for indicators of compromise in my environment, and I know that, okay, some threat actor has gotten control of Dennis Maldonado's account, and then I'm going to search through the CrowdStrike portal and look for any indicators of what Dennis Maldonado can use. Or with the new Charlotte AI, I can just prompt, show me all the recent activity that Dennis Maldonado user has done in this time frame. And it should hopefully pop up a bunch of different results that are tailored for what I'm hoping to look for. So that's where I'm hoping AI goes, but it hasn't gone there yet for us.
You have. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, for something like that, you have to be really well tuned, right? Like, you're not gonna get quality results from prompts if the back end isn't tuned right. If it's not, if your AI doesn't have a full list of all of your sources, all of your source logs, like it's not gonna give you the information you need. It's gonna give you a very narrow view. And you see this even with Google search results, right? The AI models that are providing Google search results are notoriously bad. Some of these AI tools, these large language model tools, they hallucinate, they return nonsense. You can predispose them to certain kinds of thinking and reasoning. It's just, I don't know. It seems like a lot of people have really embraced something that, one, doesn't work the way they think it does, and two, they're putting it way too many places way too rapidly.
I will ask you the question, do you remember what a blockchain was?
The exact definition, no.
But you don't need to. There was a hype, for 3 days, and now it's gone.
NFTs.
I wish it was 3 days. No, a lot of these things are just marketing terms. So, like AI, I wouldn't say that it's like at the level of blockchain or cryptocurrency or any of that stuff, but it's not really the future.
So there is a if you think logically of what you really need technology to do for you as a cyber professional. So you need two things really. Something that looks and normalizes your aggregated events, cyber events that happen under your environment, and potentially be able to prioritize them risk-wise and hopefully enable automatic block on those things. If you're able to achieve that through some algorithms, learning models, whatever, you'll be in a relatively good spot. I'm not saying that you'll be safe, because there is nothing is safe. I mean, bus can hit you tomorrow. But the idea is that from a automation point of view, you will cover the 80% of the heavy lifting associated with protection, right? Now, with that said, if you look what vendors offer nowadays, they are pretty good algorithms, capabilities to address at least portion of those needs. I mean, some of the SIEM systems that are out on the market have pretty decent analytical capabilities to normalize and simplify the noise of events that are happening in the environment. But going back to the story that, again, we are building a house of different sets of Legos, be aware that there will be a lot of noise because somebody in some systems will not be properly configured, and some user will try to connect there and they will remember their password in the browser, and every time when they open the browser, that browser will try to automatically log into the last system that was there and so on, and they changed password yesterday, and that will create a brute force event there. So there will be a lot of noise that your systems will actually observe, and you need to be able to filter them out. But again, going back to understanding how your environment is built, understanding the capabilities of different systems, understanding of how your layers of protection, both logical, both technological, and people-wise, actually manage and integrate and collaborate within your environment, can help you minimize the risk, can help you build a rapid response plans and activities. And from there on, I mean, it's a good old-fashioned work, hard work.
I think I'm going to repeat what you said, basically. My hope is that AI can do the boring parts of my job for me, basically. I'm not worried about AI replacing me, but I see it as a tool that's very useful for doing my job more efficiently. And I'm already seeing the benefits of that, such as writing bash scripts or shell scripts, whereas I used to Google and find in discussion forums where someone else had written a script that did something similar and modify it and spend time troubleshooting it. I can just ask any of the AIs to write a bash script, and then it comes out close that would have taken me 20 minutes to find or whatever. Just ask it questions about specific commands, and it can just give you information that I would normally have to go Google and read articles for. I'm definitely reaping the benefits already of being able to do my job more efficiently with the use of AI. And that's just, it's in its infancy now too, which is great. So it's hopefully going to get better and better. And then of course it also helps attackers get better.
Same way.
Just keeps it interesting, fortunately, because they were getting kind of bored.
We got a video in here, why don't you?
Yes,
So I'm an academic advisor at the university that meets with a lot of computer science undergraduates. And they'll express that they're interested in cybersecurity. We don't have a concentration in cybersecurity. So what can they do when they're getting the base computer science degree to learn something, to get a certification, to differentiate themselves so that they're more prepared if they want to do that after they get done with their degree?
I think they need to know what area they want to go into, because that's going to change depending on where you want to go. If you want to do something like Daniel's doing, like pen testing, there's going to be a different set of certifications, there's going to be a different set of training, learning to exploit vulnerabilities. If You're going to go into network operations, network defenses. They're going to want to know how patch cycles work. They're going to want to know how to manage network operations and network systems. They're going to want to know how the business functions of managing downtime for patching and updating works. And those are different skill sets than being able to script bash command or something that is going to exploit a SQL command, it's going to exploit a web application vulnerability. They need to know how to patch those vulnerabilities. They need to know how to manage the business of that. If they're going to go into some of the blue team side stuff, but if they're going to go red team, they need to know how to break stuff better. Like Daniel was saying.
Dennis, by the way.
Dennis,
Most people call me Dan, I don't know why, it's a
I
D.
swear, that's what I
So, yes, just like my colleague here was saying, it really benefits on if they know what they want to do, but we get a lot of students, a lot of people in the field may not know. So getting that exposure is super important. Starting off with computer science, they're already doing good by starting off in that field, but if they can go off on their own and kind of experiment with different things, there's lots of ways to do that. They can build their own home lab, build their own infrastructure, and mess with things there. Kind of like how I said I like to build things and then break things. There's a lot of resources online like Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, anything else like that, if you guys remember. Those are security-centric challenges.
Board game style.
Yeah, board game style stuff, challenges with points and leaderboards that will give them different experiences from blue team to red team, stuff like that. But also, most importantly, is the networking aspect. There's a lot of events, meetups, conferences all over the world, specifically here in Texas and specifically in Austin, which is super hot, 30 minutes away, that are cybersecurity centric, that are open to anyone with any background, any level of experience. A good one coming up is B-Sides Austin. B-Sides Austin is a 2-day security conference. I believe it's happening December 7th and 8th. Don't quote me on that. But I'll actually be speaking there, and that is a free conference for anyone in any level to just go and get exposure to the network of cybersecurity, to different topics through CTF competitions, lock picking, and all the talks that are going on. There's also meetups like DC 512, which is a DEF CON group in Austin. There's AHA, Austin Hackers Anonymous. There's a lot of different organizations that you can just go meet up and network with people and get exposed to all that.
AHA is very friendly.
And I'll add one extra thing, which is going beyond those traditional things. So, cybersecurity is not built the same way in different industries. So I can tell you, coming from a fintech to oil and gas, the oil and gas works in the cybersecurity at snail pace. And in fintech, you're always on the top of the wave, and all the new things and all the new cool gadgets, they have the money to buy them. So I would say kind of having a preference of what industry they want to go through is kind of useful, at least to narrow down a little bit, not a lot, little bit, the field in which they need to get kind of exposed to and so on. So med device security is different than IoT on oil and gas, different than SCADA control systems, different than definitely the office and telecom. I mean, there are a lot of different aspects, and one thing that I studied computer science and I stopped with computer science, and then I finished my undergrad in business and the executive MBA as well. I cannot say that I'm computer science or by education, but that's what I worked all my life. And I can tell you that the technology is so diverse, is such a huge field, both on the security and the technology that needs to be protected. It's very, very difficult for people to gain expertise unless they focus in a very, very narrow area there. So, I mean, it's all about choices. Unfortunately, if they want to start somewhere, they need to pick an area, pick a business, and then if they want cybersecurity in that business area, they need to learn specific skill for that business area. and they will become more and more entrenched and more understanding what's going on as they grow and understand the business, how it operates, what system do they use, how those systems are being used in different business case scenarios, and move from there. If you're trying to build security for a subway station, there are a lot of air gap systems, a lot of SCADA systems, but if you're trying to do the control systems for a pipeline, despite that they are still SCADA systems, they are very, very different compared to those in subway. So am I interested in transportation going into the trains and subways? Am I interested in oil and gas and pipelines there? It's a tough choice, I don't know.
All right, I'm gonna take it to move on to our next.
Actually, let me add one quick comment. Actually, I was talking with Toni about something very similar to your question, like what looks good in an interview. I imagine many of them are going for entry-level beginning security positions. And one thing I've seen that has made a difference as we've interviewed various candidates for positions in my company is those who have done home labs and those who have played with the tools. Because
How would you learn something without a home lab? That's perplexing.
Right, and I think we're all up here assuming that is the obvious answer, right? But it's not, I guess, when someone's starting out. Most of the professional tools have free versions, trial licenses and stuff like that. So if someone gets, I'm blanking on tool names for some reason, but just has some familiarity with it because they installed it. Yeah, and completely blanking out. But if they play with it for a week, they've installed it, they've dumped logs, they've dumped the network traffic or whatever, when they go into the interview, you'll really stand out if you're like, oh, I've used that some in my lab, I've done this and that, versus someone who's like, oh, I've heard of it, perhaps. So
Yeah, and a lot of positions that you're gonna be applying for, somewhere in there, they'll generally tell you what kind of systems you're gonna be using at that position. So, you know, you can just look at a posting and then go like, okay, I need to familiarize myself with these systems. And generally just go to the vendor website and get a free trial, ask for a free trial.
And this is how the companies get hacked. Because if I tell you in a job posting, if I tell you in my LinkedIn profile, I just took certification in Palo Alto, I just took certification in CrowdStrike, I just took certification in something else, what does it mean? I have those systems in my office. I can go and research those vulnerabilities. I can go and try exploits for those systems. I mean, I may not be successful, but I am 2 steps further and closer to getting to hacking you, just because you expose that information to me.
it's exploited through the interview also as well.
Yeah.
I understand that point, but also I don't agree that it's super impactful because it's just security through obscurity. A dedicated attacker is going to eventually find out that I have Cisco or Palo Alto or whatever. Yeah, but to support your point, absolutely. When I do interviews, when I'm interviewing for tech positions, or when I'm interviewing candidates to work for me, yeah, they have Palo Alto or Microsoft, whatever, CCNA certifications, but I usually don't really care about that because anyone can take a test and pass it and still not know what the hell they're doing.
Correct.
But whenever they say they have a home lab, that immediately perks up, like, okay, they're already a step above all the other candidates that didn't mention that. And I'm confident that if they put it on the resume, they've probably done enough with that home lab to at least have an idea of what they're actually doing as far as running commands or installing the tools or managing them.
And they'll less likely to embarrass themselves if you ask them technical questions.
And honestly, I would say it's also important, as you were saying, networking, because it's like, as much as you can know any of these systems, it's like you can be taught that stuff on the job, but if you can have somebody who can go to bat for you and be, because you can't really interview, feel like, is this person a good worker? Does this person match our corporate culture? Can this person be depended on to like be available? If you have somebody who is already in their system who can, you know, go to bat for you, feel like this guy's a good worker, this guy knows his stuff, then that's gonna, you know, if it's a dead heat between you and the next person, that might be the thing that puts you over.
I've always advised people, like, if you get the interview, they probably know you're technically capable. They just want to see if they want to spend 40 hours a week around you.
Sure. All right, I'm gonna get us to pivot to our next section, which will be career advice. To end that section, for your home lab, labgopher.com. is your friend. On our next section, which is going to be career advice, what specific certification skill or hard skill or soft skill is vital for a new cybersecurity candidate?
Sec Plus, SSP, GIAC. It's pretty industry standard now. But other than that, soft skills, that customer voice, that I would say just that critical thinking. And I would say that as opposed to like learning the specific steps to the things that you're learning or to the things that you're doing, it's more important that you learn some reliable depositories for information. Your IEEE, your GitHub, what is it, Stack Overflow, stuff like that. Reliable areas where you can go to where it's like, I have a question. It's unlikely that you're the first person in the entire world who's dealing with this system, who has experienced this problem. So if you can find an area that you can find reliable answers, that's great. If you go to your IT team and your technician, analyst, engineer, doctor say your architecture is looking at like Yahoo Answers, your core, it might be a situation where it's like, dang guys, I think we're going to jail.
Wow. I was going to say the certifications, the CCSP is pretty standard one, GAC is pretty standard. The way it is pretty huge. And the things that encompass what people refer to generally as cybersecurity or information security overarch virtually everything we do in business practices today. So you have to be really patient with how you learn. You have to be really patient with the time it takes to learn. And the other thing is to be able to read really well. I think that so many problems, especially like when you talk about weaknesses and configurations and vulnerabilities in network systems, so much of it can be traced back to people not reading what's in front of them and then doing what's required to secure the system. And this is doing things like changing default passwords on your home router. These are things like taking the time to click update, right? These are behavioral things. These are things that are initiated, instantiated through you reading instructions. And a lot of the times, it's RTFM is what it comes down to.
So I'm going to be the bad guy again. So they mentioned certifications, so you mentioned Security Plus, which is the CompTIA certification, CISSP. If you're someone who wants to get into cybersecurity and you're one of two things, right? You need guidance, or you need that guidance to figure out what to study, what to learn, and teach yourself. So certifications are great for that. They're also great for getting into the door for those large companies that have those resume scanners that need those certifications. But when AI scanners, right? You can just put that in white text and whatever. But when it comes to like, do you need those certifications to be successful in the field? I argue that you don't. I, for example, don't have any certifications. What was that? Yeah, there you go, perfect. So we both don't have any certifications, but I think we're both relatively successful in this career. It's because we are able to figure out what we need to learn, what our goals are, and figure out what we need to do to get to those goals. And for me, that was learning everything that I want to learn that technology. And I wasn't waiting for anyone or anything to teach me, because the University of Houston didn't have the cybersecurity program. There was no certifications that I felt like paying for. So I just created my own lab, set up an environment, and hacked it myself. And maybe hacked some other things, but that's another story for another day. Just self-teach yourself and have that mindset of, okay, I have this goal, I want to learn it, I'm going to do it. And then, and when you're successful in that, you become more confident in that, and you're able to communicate that in your interviews. And then, just like my colleague here was saying, the networking aspect. If you build that network of peers who can vouch for you, then you go into the interview, you're already a head up because they vouch for you, and you can communicate. I'm what is the word? I'm enthusiastic about this technology. I love this. You're going to land that job. So certifications aren't the end goal to get what you need, to get that job. They do help, but you can be successful without them.
I would reiterate what you said, that IT in general is an industry of, can you do the job? Can you do the work? And if you can, then you can get the job. And that's partly because there are no programs for cybersecurity. And cybersecurity even more like that. Like, can you do you express the interest? Do you express the knowledge? Are you self-driven? And are you capable of doing the job? And that's because of the lack of perhaps actual formal programs to bring people into it, and also the breadth of it, because it's so broad that it's so niche. And yeah, we're kind of examples of that without any real formal education in it, just we did it on our own. And so, yeah, that is another aspect of it to remember. And that's where networking comes in, because that's when you can show people that you can do it, and then the opportunities open up.
I can tell you that the biggest disappointment in a job interview is to have an alphabet soup of certification and you cannot answer basic questions.
Yeah, I get that a lot in my resumes.
I can tell you, unfortunately, I had to get an alphabet soup behind my name, and that happened about 10 years ago. And again, 28 plus years in the career, and I was forced at the job to get those certification. And I swear to anybody before, I will not do that. You really don't need the certifications. If you want to be good at the job, it's up to you, not up to certification that somebody will give you. So I'll tell you that, I mean, we discuss a lot of the things about the labs and the mindset of teaching yourself, reading a lot, fixing problems. People do not learn from success, people learn from failure. So find as many problems you can solve and teach yourself how to solve them. And I'll tell you from my personal experience, beyond the patience that was mentioned, because that was the first word that came to my mind when the question was asked, but I'm a person that have to say a lot no to a lot of other people, including my CEO. And you need to understand that as you grow in the job, you'll be asked to say no a lot, and you will have to accept no a lot. I have to accept no every day when I want to do something to improve the security of the company, and my CFO tells me no, my CEO tells me no, and both of them know that this is a good thing to do, because the business cannot allow itself to do it at this point of time. So in my current company, for example, when they hired me to get the product and services certified and secured for our customers, because the customer, the one guy, just woke up to the word cybersecurity. And what happened is that when I started, I said, gung ho, let's do it. And it took me 3 years to sell it internally in my company. To the people to say, you're wrong because you want to do it too fast, you want to change the company too fast, you're doing too many things which are counter the company culture. So be ready, be patient, but be persistent in the objectives, the goals, the drive to improve things. And be aware that no is not really a no. It's simply a roadblock that teaches you to find alternative way to get to the same point that you want. Penetration test is not because somebody leaves a lot of doors open. They need to find a door, then move sideways, find another door, move a lot more sideways, find another door, until they get to where they want to get. And with life, with jobs, it's exactly the same thing. You will move laterally a lot, maybe forward as well. Most of the work, most of the things that you'll have to do will be move sideways in order to get forward.
Can I leave some parting advice for this topic? So the advice I like to give is cybersecurity is a very unique and very big field. There is not one path into becoming successful in cybersecurity. I implore you guys not to pigeonhole yourself into thinking, oh, Dennis was successful because he did this, or anyone in this panel was successful because they did this, and try to mimic what we did. Find your own path, whether it's going through college, completing the courses, and finding a job from there or not. You know, some of the smartest people I know that I work with doesn't have any college education at all, but they're one of the most successful people. Likewise, on the other end of the spectrum, there's people with PhDs and doctorates who are just as successful or even more. So just don't lock into one specific path or example. Don't compare yourself to others and find your own way to be successful.
But remember, you still will be working with people. And if you don't have the social skills to work with people, then build those as quickly as possible. When I joined this company, there was a guy that I inherited in my team that had on the wall that he was sitting. I learned 16 years not to talk to people. He was in IT. I had to fire the guy. You work with people, you work for people. And if you are not able to do so, find a way to do it if you want to be successful.
Yeah, the relationships are the big part, and I will just say this one more thing about the certifications. Like if you know nothing about the field and you want to get familiarized with the terminology, the common concepts, certifications can be a great way to do that. But by and large, they're for HR, right? Certifications are for human resources, because when you get into the interview with the hiring managers, you're still going to need to know what you're talking about. And you know, as was said earlier, somebody can take a test and still, you know, the next day not know what they're talking about. But that doesn't mean that, you know, those certifications are just abjectly useless. There's a reason that they bear certain value in the market, and it's one of those things that's like, it's a differentiator for the people who are going to grant you access through the gates, is what it comes down to. And it's it's just one way of showing that you know, at least, you know, this part of the field or these terminologies, or you understand the concepts of, you know, a maturity model, or you understand the concept of a business continuity plan, disaster recovery plans. Like, you know what these things mean, and you've shown that. But yeah, again, their certifications aren't going to teach you how to do the job, right? The jobs that you do are going to be learned by doing them. That's what it comes down to.
But yeah, if you're looking for the industry standard, Sec Plus through CompTIA, CISP through IC2, GIAC, they got a bunch of them.
Pen 200.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Pen 200 over CEH.
Yeah, well, that too, but also I was going to say OSCP, but they're doing some weird nonsense right now. So
Yeah, that'll help you not get filtered by the HR machine.
OSCP expires now.
OSCP expires now.
Do you have to have CPs?
No, you have to do it again.
Shit.
One other piece of advice I would give to a young person starting out is that cybersecurity is a constantly evolving business also. It's literally an arms race between the good guys and the bad guys. And staying up to date with current events, finding great podcasts to subscribe to and great industry newsletters to read. Because I've actually had interviews where I went in and spent half the time just talking about something like CrowdStrike that had happened. And if someone went into an interview and you asked them, hey, did CrowdStrike affect you where you guys used to work? And they're like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, podcasts are great just for staying up on what's going on in the world, like offensive security, or what's the one that
My personal favorite is Darknet.
Darknet Diaries is great.
And in fact,
Hackle's a good one.
Darknet's great for current events, but also he does stories on historic ones such as for Stuxnet, Not Pet Yet, stuff like that. And that one's a good one to listen to because it's a lot of history of hacks and cybersecurity, and that can kind of get you in the right mindset of how things work and how attacks work and how defense works also.
Yeah,
It's an education on its own, I think.
I love security podcasts. I mean, my wife listens to them.
Is this where I get to like shameless plug? I just been featured in 2 podcasts for the first time ever. And
That was not coordinated.
and in both of them, I actually talk about how to become successful in this industry. Well, the first one I did, the second one, they asked me how I got started, and it kind of paints a story of my path into cybersecurity. So yeah, if you want to listen to those, just type my name into it.
Which ones are you?
Protect It All, which is an OTIT podcast, and HughesNet Cast, which is a HughesNet podcast.
All right, as this is the advice portion of it, I will open up the floor to 2 questions from anybody who would like the mic. Go ahead. Yes, mine, I like the gesture.
I wouldn't really call it a question because y'all been answering all the questions pretty beautifully. So I feel like this is kind of a broad question.
So I was gonna ask, compared to like the rest of the tech sector, would cybersecurity also fall in the realm of like, being a little shaky or uncertain, in the coming future?
Can you?
There's always gonna be bad guys.
Yeah, there's always gonna be somebody out there who's trying to pull off something. I mean, is your question like, does the field feel shady, like working in it? I mean, what's
Volatile, like layoffs.
Yeah. Like,
volatile? No. No, I mean,
overall, no.
overall, no. I mean, I guess it depends on, if you think about something like, we're going back to CrowdStrike, right? Like, they were at, it was at the Black Hat or DEF CON, and they won an award, which was like the biggest fail of the year award. And he really, he took his lashings, and the CEO or whatever took responsibility and was like, obviously we can't let this happen again, but we appreciate everybody, taking the time to help us figure it out. And I mean, they haven't seen a decline in business. People are still using them. The field itself is not going to stop growing, mostly because there is no stopping the proliferation of technology. And the more technology is proliferated out into our socio-technical environment, the more complicated and complex those interactions are going to become, and the more necessary it's going to be to protect certain resources and assets. I don't think it's going anywhere.
So, great question. I actually addressed that question on my podcast as well. So
He was on a podcast today.
it was fun. So, on the contrary, I think it's obviously getting a lot stronger, because think of it now. All the big news you're seeing, the CrowdStrike outage, the Change Healthcare ransomware incident, cybersecurity has become a household name. Your grandma is talking about it during that dinner, and it's only getting worse. These ransomware threat actors are only getting more courageous. They're now attacking critical infrastructure.
They're getting paid.
They're getting paid. Yeah, people are paying the ransom.
Countries are paying.
Yeah, Salt Typhoon, you got Chinese espionage allegedly attacking U.S. communications infrastructure. This stuff is only getting more prevalent, and what that's doing is that these leadership of the organization, the non-technical leadership, the CEO, the CFO, the legal counsel, they are now supportive of cybersecurity, whereas before, it was just part of IT, which was the cost center, just wasted money. But no, cybersecurity protects their interests because it protects their bottom line, and so they're now pumping money into it and hiring more people and keeping the resources where they need to be.
And I'll also say, as part of your question about the layoffs, it's just the compositions of the teams that were most heavily affected by the layoffs. So for a lot of those teams that experienced huge layoffs, it's like your programmers, QA saw huge cuts, moderators. These are the groups of people who were sort of overemployed throughout the pandemic, especially, who at the very end, they were like, we got to cut people. We don't need this many programmers. We don't need this many QA people if we don't have this many programmers. But cybersecurity teams, generally speaking, they keep them pretty lean. We're not really a money-making team. So it's just like, how many people can we employ to where we can say we're doing the best we can with what we got?
I'll give you a completely different spin on everything that was said so far. So, it is true that cybersecurity sector is growing. It is true that companies are awakening more and more about cybersecurity. It is true that companies are hiring more and more about cybersecurity. However, with all that said, it is also true that cybersecurity will be the least funded portion of organization going forward.
Until they get hacked.
No, even after that. And do you know why? Because there are cyber insurance there. So I can tell you that yes, people and companies awake that cybersecurity is not exactly a cost center, but actually an element that supports the growth of the business. That's correct. But if they can save on cybersecurity spending versus some other project, again, it's a tough question. If the other project is more about growth, they will spend the money there. If cybersecurity is somehow slowing or making the business process inefficient, they will cut on the cybersecurity for sure. Or they will not cut, they will bypass the cybersecurity until somebody wakes up and say, hey, we are actually exposing ourselves, we are making this business less efficient by, again, it's a mindset. And you need to understand that there are very positive things happening, but it's up to the cyber professionals to make and prove themselves useful on a daily basis and build business skills beyond the technology, beyond their day job, to help the business understand that they're useful there. Again, if you're a cyber expert, get refreshed on law. Business law is daily used in cybersecurity. Privacy laws are a huge element and risk for cybersecurity. So build your second major in law immediately. I can tell you that. I spend at least 40% of my time on contracts. Now, there is another portion that you guys need to understand. There is a lot of hype in the cybersecurity area on the vendor side of cybersecurity tools. So I cannot tell you how many small companies, big companies, and so on try to build cybersecurity products for problems that do not exist. Those companies will be like, I don't know, flies. They'll be there for a day, 2, 3. They will see that there is no business, they'll go. If you're working for this kind of company, sorry, it's like any other startup. So you need to figure out, are you want to be on the vendor side in the cybersecurity, because there are a lot of risks there like any other company, or you want to help businesses be secure, but then you need to build a lot of skills. And again, you need to distinguish yourself beyond the core cybersecurity skills. Because that's one of the areas where, I'm sorry to say, yeah, people may cut because there is still a learning curve for the executive management to understand how cybersecurity helps them. I will add one last thing. Sometimes it's good to be the hated person in the company when people see that the hate actually helps them. I built security questionnaire as part of our annual training that I made people fail on purpose. Why? Because the many times they take it, the more they learn. That was the topic for 3 years in a row. Yes, business was growing because we are offering security and so on. Everybody hated the cybersecurity quiz or the security quiz. But they understood because after that people learned, hey, I saw this phishing email, is that legit or not? Hey, I have this project, should we do it this way? Sometimes it's good, but again, you need to prove yourself beyond the core skills of the cybersecurity in order to consider kind of a safety of the job.
Yeah, different businesses might treat you differently as well. You know, like I'm working in semiconductors, and one of the core aspects of semiconductors is the development life cycle of silicon chips, which is anywhere from 3 to 6 years, depending on the complexity of those chips. The intellectual property around the development of these technologies is anywhere from, another 5 to 7 years on top of that sometimes, depending on what the development is. And when you think about cybersecurity or information security in an instance like that, especially when you're referring to the IT infrastructure that protects the security environments within which those product development cycles take place, the value of protecting those environments through effective and consistent cybersecurity and information security policy and practices, the return on that is immense. But because that is often not the focus of what the business people think about, like was said, it's your job to constantly remind them, like, hey, you're investing over 6-7 years, $500 million into this project that if a threat actor gets these 10 files, you will lose virtually all of that investment because they will go and they will clone that technology and sell it cheaper in markets that don't have regulations, right? So it's important to remind the business process and the business infrastructure that it is worth protecting their IP and their data because that is what makes them viable. And the best analogy that I've ever heard is if business is the engine, then information and cybersecurity are the brakes on a car. Because you can't drive a car all gas, no brakes, right? Unless you're trying to jump over something. But you have to have brakes on a car to navigate safely in the driving environment, right? Just like you have to have brakes on the business to navigate safely your business environment, your IT environment. Because if people are just out there constantly throttling, you're going to crash. So,
I'm gonna say this on top of what they both just said. So this is something that I'm sure y'all are all gonna have to deal with in the future, but no matter how simple you make your processes and your policies, customers will always complain. So do not give them an inch. Be prepared to defend y'all's positions in the office because it doesn't matter how easy it is. If you make an app so that it auto-fills the forms, they're still gonna complain. Be ready for that.
Addressing your question about the job market, the state of the job market for cybersecurity for the last many years has been that there's more open positions than there are qualified professionals. And I think that has continued to be that way just because there's more and more jobs, in part because of what we said about how high-level execs see all these hacks. Our grandmas are talking about cybersecurity, so they're like, maybe we need to do something about that. One place where I worked a few years ago had 5 people doing cybersecurity, and then within a year, basically someone had a talk with the upper level execs, we really need to spend, this is a utility by the way, we need to spend more money on cybersecurity, and they grew it into 5 departments of 5 to 6 people each, which was more what that organization needed. It was critical infrastructure, it was more what it was deserving. And that's the kind of growth that's happening. It's outpacing qualified professional supply. And so if you are a qualified professional, then you're the seller in a market where there's more demand than supply. So you get a lot more power and freedom to move where you want, to leave where you are if you're not happy and go somewhere else. And that's something I've experienced since I moved into it. That's been really, really nice.
And the more hats you wear, the more safe and more value will be in the business. Again, if they can have one person doing 3 jobs, why would they pay for 3 people doing 1 job?
All right, I'm gonna cut y'all off there because I can only get one more question from my side before I end this, and I want all of you guys to think of your last question for today. For you guys, while we still have them, I'm gonna ask them mine, and hopefully we can get through that one quickly, and then we'll get to one more for the audience. The question that I have for these guys is, how do you see the field of cybersecurity evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
Gee, Tony, make it easier this once.
That's
We each have 1 minute to answer this question.
okay, yeah, that's great. But actually, that's almost exactly the same question that, well, okay, maybe the same answer that this gentleman asked. What's your name?
Nick.
Nick, nice to meet you, Nick. It's growing. Again, it's become a household name. More incidents are happening. It's only a matter of time until some company in San Marcos gets ransomware and they show up on the block. And I'm gonna tweet about it when they do. So hopefully it's not Texas State, but anyways, I mean, Texas State did get hacked, didn't they? No, okay. Okay. Some university did, but it's only becoming more prevalent. The threat actors are finding that it is absolutely lucrative to make the money to do it. So these our companies who want to defend themselves are putting more resources into it, are hiring more people. And as you said, currently the market is, there is not enough good cybersecurity people to fill all the jobs. So get ahead of that. Get the self-training that you need to get into this field. Start building your network because those jobs are there. They just need to find you. That's my one.
One thing I would like to see in the future is that ransoms be outlawed. Because right now, when a company gets hacked, if they have cyber insurance, don't negotiate with terrorists. Because in the state now is the company will get all their computers crypto-locked and their insurance is like, well, it's cheaper to pay the ransom than it is to rebuild everything. So they pay the ransom, they get the key, they got $10 million or whatever. They're like, oh, great, we got a lot more resources. Hire more hackers, buy more hacking tools. That's something I would like to see personally.
I'm trying not to rebuttal because of the time, but you're right, it's a business decision. I would love to see no one pay the ransom, but ultimately it's a business decision. If I'm running a business and it's $10 million for a ransom versus $100 million to recover.
It's always a 10 million.
Well, no, it's not because MGM went at 100 million.
City of
They
Pittsburgh
did
did the
not
same
pay the 12 million ransom, and
It's few and far between
their stock
that
price
decide.
went up, so yes.
Few and far between that are like, no, you're not gonna
It's a
get your dirty
business.
money.
Yeah, the average Joe will, again, it depends on the size of the business and the place in the market. But you're right, sometimes you may do it for the principal. But in most cases, actually it will be out of your hand because the insurance company will decide on your behalf.
That's why I asked you.
That's why I don't use the insurance company. I've decided not to use that insurance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
That's a whole nother
it's a
debate.
mandatory requirement anyway. So you know what? 10 years, 5 years from now, it's a long time. I recently actually read a book, sci-fi fun book, that was all about political events which were related to technology that potentially can develop in the next 5 to 10 years. But it's not what the technology will become, because I do believe the machines will become smarter. The people will outsource more and more decision making to algorithms. But what will most likely still be the problem down the line is people will still think that if it's not explicitly forbidden, it's permitted.
It's true.
And with that mindset, right, because I didn't explicitly forbid, I will be able to exploit a lot of things that are by default allowed because nobody thought that something will go wrong. And that's why when I say that build the mindset that things will go bad, 5 years, 10 years from now, you still will be valuable, regardless what happens.
Don't trust machines, gang.
Don't just, yeah.
Do your best. Don't give them your information. I believe you.
If my refrigerator asks my phone number, I'm going after it.
I would say, so there are some fundamental questions that have to be addressed first. And one, will the nature of the internet change? Those fundamental questions. And answer them. The fundamental structures of the internet are not going to change. So many of the same challenges and weaknesses that we deal with now are going to perpetuate in just different kinds of ways. You're still going to see arbitrary code execution risks. You're still going to see people leaving misconfigured servers on the internet. You're still going to see all of these things. What will additionally happen is, as was mentioned earlier, the bar is going to get lower and lower for people who want to exploit the system, because tools like AI will make hacking tools, phishing tools, exploitation tools more available, more accessible, and more easily deployed. And what that's going to require is a different kind of vigilance, because now what we're talking about as we outsource algorithms, as we outsource our decision making, is we are going to see ramifications of social engineering executed against people, and how the automation of their own lives will then turn against them. Because as you build out these automated systems, which are coming, I promise you, this is a big focus on virtually every technology company's mind, is IoT, edge, cloud computing. How do the devices that live at the edge of the processing space dictate the algorithmic functions of our life? As more and more of those decisions are outsourced, the automation that comes behind that will become more precarious, because if you get socially engineered and all of your cryptographic keys that you have to use to access any of your accounts, because everybody's gone to a no password environment, and you have all of your cryptographic keys now set on automatic processes, and one thing goes wrong because you make the foolish decision as a person, then those automated features that once were helping you are going to harm you. And so I think the real danger is, and you already see it happening, and it's kind of tragic, right? The way that applications are developed and deployed on our devices. How many people understand or can go and access the underlying file system of the device in their pockets? How many people in the audience? How many normal users out there? And as the technology companies try and pack on more and more firepower, so to speak, into these devices, they wind up becoming almost self-fulfilling, right? And so I guess I worry that the future of cybersecurity starts to become more and more about the future of how humanity comes to terms with the fact that people lie. And that automating our lives doesn't stop people from being tricked. It doesn't stop people from making stupid choices. And that's where I think it's going. I think it's going much more into the psychological space, whereby you have to be hyper aware of the things that are going on in your pocket that maybe you're not now. So,
thank you, guys. All right, now we will be having pizza and swag outside, unless you have one question I was asking for earlier. Anybody? I mean, I want to go get pizza and go home, so I'm good with eating too. Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's definitely different skill aspects in the sections of cybersecurity to really understand. I mean, you can't really become a masterful of cybersecurity, but would you emphasize just trying to become proficient in one skill of cybersecurity, or try to get a broad understanding of everything, but not so much that you can go into depth with it?
I thought one of the certification mottos was mild, wide, and deep. So you really cannot get proficient in something unless you dive deep into it. But you cannot be proficient in cybersecurity unless you understand. Again, it's called the risk universe for a reason, because it's practically infinite. How you get exposed, from where the bad things can happen. I'm not sure there is one person that can list all the threat vectors to a system. Remember, the more complex the systems are, the more bugs and the bigger vulnerabilities they have and they build. And I can tell you, just look at the very simple business process. I mean, you coming here and being enrolled in a university, imagine what's the step-by-step the process for you to attend day-to-day activities. How many steps there are, how many steps can break, where you put your data, how this data actually is managed, who has access to it, how it can get exposed. There are so many places, so many different types of issues that can happen. I mean, you need to understand and understand that you have a limitation of how much at any given point of time you can know, But the wider your view is, the more various controls you'll be able to build. And even then, will not be efficient because a lot of them will not be able to work together in the entire chain of the business process. So definitely learn as much as you can, maybe not to the depth that you wish to, but if you understand the fundamentals of how things operate, how they work, I think you'll be good.
I think it really depends on what kind of position you specifically are looking for. So if you're looking for a position with a smaller company, with a smaller team, you're going to need a broader skill set. I guess you're going to need to know a little bit about each different part. You're going to need to know a little bit of infrastructure, a little bit of networking. But if you're going to be working in like a major Fortune 500 company, generally they're going to have multiple teams that are much more compartmentalized. So if you're at one of those bigger companies, you're going to need to know this specific skill set, and that's all you're going to do all day. So it's really a question of what you specifically are looking for.
I mean, you can start with just learning, the structure of a packet. Start there, and that will take you down 7 different pathways all at once. I mean, really, like, just learn the fundamentals of how a network works. Learn the fundamentals of how data transmission works. Start with just knowing how images are deployed to machines. Practice building and then destroying machines. It really just understanding, because again, like I said, the fundamental nature of the internet is not going to change. So if you understand what TCP/IP is, if you understand the OSI model, if you understand your networking layers, like you're going to be a step ahead of a lot of people who are maybe just running to a test. That's all I got.
Yeah, I would restate what they said regarding have broad technical knowledge, like understand in a corporate environment you have computers, you have servers, you have networks, you have cloud stuff, and storage. Get to know how all those pieces work together, and then you'll have a better understanding of how they can be exploited. And stay broad, because once you get into your job, then you'll have the opportunity to get very narrow with the tools that you're specifically using. Because the great thing about it is every company is different. Everyone's baby was built out of different Legos, I think you were saying. So don't be intimidated. This is another piece of advice I give people looking for their first jobs. Don't be intimidated by a job description, because that's really a wish list. They're not really requirements. That's what they would love to find. Don't be afraid to apply, and if you have experience, like I said, if you played with some of the tools and you can go and be like, oh, I tried that out, I did this, I dumped this, I analyzed this, that will stand out, and they'll know that you're capable of learning what they need you to learn. And that's what you'll do once you get in, and you'll learn the specific narrow niche of tools and knowledge and part of the environment that you'll be working with, especially at a bigger company, like you said.
Everyone here has said, learn, right? Everybody to say why? And they're right. But don't be afraid to dive into something you really want to do, right? Because hopefully not everyone here, your goal is to just work in cybersecurity. Hopefully either you have or will find out what you really want to do in cybersecurity, because again, it's such a big field. And it's okay to focus on that. Like for me, I wanted to do pen testing when I was getting started, so I focused on that. I still got the mile-wide view. I learned a little bit of everything, so I have an understanding of everything, but then I went deep into web application security and network pen testing, and that's what I want to do, that's what I learned, and that's the jobs that I looked for and applied for, and that's the skills that I communicated in those interviews. So it's okay to focus on that. For example, reverse engineering is another big field in cybersecurity. I know nothing of reverse engineering. I barely know what an assembly is, but just, it's okay to focus on what you want to do, but don't forget about everything else, because also, more depending on the size of the company, whatever you are in cybersecurity, no matter what, you're the cybersecurity guy. So you're going to get questions in or outside of whatever you're focused on. So at least have that higher level knowledge.
I believe Does anybody else have anything with it? Cool. Then I would like to thank the panel for spending their time with us tonight. You're welcome. And we have a speaker in the lobby. We are holding up pizza. Yeah. You don't want to eat that because you got to make it here.